Scotch has some of the most intimidating distillery and whiskey names to pronounce, and today we're going to learn some of the most difficult ones to say. However, I'm not an expert, and I might end up looking like an idiot if I tried to pronounce them on my own, so I'm going to need a guide. The problem is, they say the best person to learn these names from would be a true Scotsman, but I don't know any native Scottish people, so I'm turning to the next best thing. I'm going to have AI teach me how to say these names. We all know that AI is better than us at chess and Jeopardy, and arguably even art at this point. So why wouldn't it be just as good or even better than us at pronunciation? Why not learn from the best? My tutor today will be the Whisky Wizard, an AI supercomputer that the salesman told me was trained comprehensively on all things pertaining to whiskey. So, Wizzy, are you ready to teach me how to pronounce some Scotch whiskey names?
I am ready, Professor Jean.
That's great. So, we're going to start with distillery names. The first one I've chosen is really just a warm-up, because I wanted to start with an easy one before moving up the difficulty ladder. This distillery was founded only recently, back in 2012, so they're newer and haven't been operating very long. Wizzy, how do you pronounce this one?
Professor Jean, this one is pronounced just how it looks. The name of this distillery is Wolfburn.
Wolfburn. Hey, that was easy. Now I feel like I'm ready to move on to something more challenging. This next distillery has been around for much longer, since 1823 in fact, and seems to have something of a mixed reputation at the moment. I get the sense that they're capable of making great whiskey, but their corporate masters seem to have made a lot of questionable decisions regarding the brand. And some have criticized them for being over-premiumized. They seem to be giving off wannabe Macallan vibes, although none of that matters to me since I can't even find this whiskey, and probably couldn't afford it anyway. Wizzy, how do you pronounce this one?
Professor, this distillery is pronounced Mortlach.
Mortlach? Huh. I guess I've been pronouncing this one wrong for some time. I've always said Mortlach. Well, thanks for the correction, Wizzy.
I'm here to help, Professor Jean.
Moving on, our next distillery is found on the island of Islay, a location known for producing smoky, peaty whiskey, and this distillery is no exception. They're another newer one, though, having been established in the early 2000s. They also do a lot of things hardcore whiskey folk appreciate. They're independently owned, they keep most of their production all in one place, from barley to bottle, as they put it, and they don't artificially color or excessively filter their whiskey. So how do you pronounce this one, Wizzy?
Professor, this distillery is pronounced Kilchoman.
Really? Kilchoman? Did I get that right?
That is correct, Professor. Kilchoman.
Okay, got it. You know, the thing is, I've already had a few bottles from these guys, and quite enjoyed them until my local shop stopped carrying the brand. And this whole time I've been pronouncing it Kilchoman. Whoops, that's embarrassing.
Not to worry, Professor. Everyone makes mistakes.
Wow. Moving right along. For the next one, we're going to stay on Islay and move to the largest whiskey producer on the island. Another one known primarily for making smoky whiskey. Much of what they produce ends up in Scotch blends like Johnnie Walker, but they're well represented among independent bottlers as well, in addition to having regular official bottlings. Wizzy, how is this one pronounced?
This distillery is pronounced Caol Ila.
Really? Caol Ila? Caol Ila? Huh. Well, that's a little tricky, but not too bad. Moving on, for the next one we're going to leave Islay and head down to the lowlands to a distillery known for triple distilling their whiskey, which is a practice more common among Irish whiskey makers than Scottish ones. This distillery doesn't get on my radar much, but I have had a bottle before. It has a reputation for being a lighter style, but I didn't really find it to be all that light when I had it. I found it kind of funky and somewhat challenging. And when I say challenging, that's code for I'm not sure whether I like this or not. Wizzy, how do you pronounce this one?
Professor, this lowland distillery is pronounced Auchentoshan.
Auchentoshan? Did I do that right?
That's pretty good. When you say it, your throat should feel slightly awkward or uncomfortable. Auchentoshan.
Well, good to know. Auchentoshan. I think I got it. Next, we're moving up to the region in Scotland with the most distilleries, and that's Speyside. Speyside is home to many whiskey heavyweights like the Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, and Macallan, but this one is a less famous Speyside distillery. The expression of theirs you'd be most likely to encounter is their 13-year-old. which is an unusual bottling age for Scotch, 12 being the much more common age statement. I've had the 13 and found it slightly challenging. Anyway, how is this one pronounced, Wizzy?
Professor, this Speyside distillery is pronounced Craigellachie.
Craigellachie. Did I say that right?
That's perfect, Professor.
Very good. For the next one, we're going back to Islay. Boy, we're spending a lot of time there, aren't we? To a distillery that, unlike most of its neighbors, is actually better known for making a non-smoky style of whiskey, although they do produce some peated whiskey. How do you pronounce this one, Wizzy?
Professor, this distillery is pronounced Bunnahabhain.
Bunnahabhain? Did I say that right?
You're close, but don't be afraid to really lean into those final syllables, and it helps to jerk your head a little bit while you say it. Bunnahabhain!
Okay. Bunnahabhain. Is that better, Wizzy?
That's great, Professor. Very good. Bunnahabhain!
Okay. Our next distillery is yet another Islay distillery, and one that gets very high marks on the Whiskey Nerd scorecard. They get a good score for transparency, they tend to bottle at higher strengths, their whiskey's more naturally presented without any brown dye, and they're generally just highly regarded. Like Bunnahabhain, their flagship bottling is non-smoky, but they do produce a substantial amount of smoky whiskey as well. Wizzy, how do you pronounce the name of this distillery?
Professor, this distillery is pronounced Bruichladdich.
Okay, let me try. Bruichladdich. How was that?
Excellent, Professor. Great job.
Dang, I'm getting good at this. All right, it's now time for our next segment, where we're going to learn that it isn't only distillery names that are spelled weird and are tough to pronounce, but sometimes even a distillery's individual bottlings are given baffling and inscrutable names, and Wizzy's going to help us navigate a few of them. The first bottling we're going to look at is the one I have here. This comes from a Speyside distillery and is a cask strength malt, matured exclusively in sherry casks. It has no age statement, but in my experience, this is usually a pretty tasty whiskey. How do you pronounce this, Wizzy?
Professor Jean, this whiskey is called the Aberlour A'bunadh.
Aberlour A'bunadh? Aberlour A'bunadh? Are you sure about that? Are you sure this distillery isn't pronounced Aberlour?
Professor, with all due respect, do you have as much processing power as I do?
No. I don't suppose I do.
So, will you let me do the thinking? Can you do that, please?
Okay, jeez. You're awfully touchy. Anyway, while we have it out here, let's have a taste of the Aberlour A'bunadh. The nose on this one rarely disappoints. It's always kind of an intoxicating, meaty bouquet of dried fruits and berries, some sour cherry, and some nice baking spices. This is one of my favorite whiskeys to really cram my nose into. On the palate, though, this whiskey's a bit trickier. At full strength, the attack is just too hot to sip without adding water, at least for me. But it's easy to add too much water, and it tends to drown easily. My normal experience with this one tends to include a really impressive nose, but has a palate that's a little underwhelming. But of course, that will depend on which batch you're sipping, since each individual release will be a little different. The bottle here is from batch 61, back from when the whiskey was more affordable. For the next bottle, we're going to take a look at another whiskey from Islay. Geez, I should have spent more time looking for non-Islay whiskeys, probably. Seems like too many of these are from Islay. Oh well. Anyway, this one's another high-strength bruiser, and a smoky one at that, from the notorious Ardbeg distillery. I don't have an open bottle of this at the moment, but from memory it is a potent, briny mix of smoke and charred meat. At least that's my memory of it. I'm not always in the mood for it, but sometimes it's just perfect. Wizzy, what's this expression called?
Professor, this one is the Ardbeg Uigeadail.
Okay, the Ardbeg Uigeadail. Great. Now for the final whiskey, we're staying on Islay, but we're revisiting a distillery we looked at earlier, so we're combining an already difficult-to-pronounce distillery with a perhaps even more difficult-to-pronounce bottling. We're going back to the Bunnahabhain distillery. Wizzy, what do you call this one?
Professor Jean, this whiskey is called the Bunnahabhain Toiteach a DHA.
Ooh, boy. That sounds pretty tricky, but I'll give it a try. Bunnahabhain Toiteach a DHA. How was that? Did I do all right?
That was very good, Professor. You've done very well. Bunnahabhain Toiteach a DHA.
Excellent. Looks like now I'm an expert at Scotch whiskey pronunciation. And to think I learned this all from a computer. I guess AI really is better than us humans at everything. Well, thanks for watching.